Everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamer Dad channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So today's video is one of those videos that you probably would never have thought I'd make, but according to tradition, when I play the Division, and from the way I played the Division 1, at the end of the life of the game, when all the PvE content has basically been squeezed out, I usually go into Dark Zone and run through landmarks, just run around the entire open area, and just enjoy the sandbox that the Dark Zone is for the PvE content. I don't engage in the PvP content because it's not necessarily my cup of tea, but I've always enjoyed the way the Dark Zone has been set up. Now, the Division 1's Dark Zone is ultimately one of the better concepts that have actually been put in place. The Division 2, unfortunately, a lot of ambition kind of caught the developers, so they decided to make a full-blown one-to-one representation of DC, and then they probably didn't have any more memory that they could put a full-fledged Dark Zone in the game, and hence, I think from a technical perspective, they went ahead and split the Dark Zones into 3. In fact, at first, the rumors came out that that's exactly what happened, and then to think again that the Division was actually on the last-gen consoles, I think that's probably an explanation that they could have gone with. But if you think about it too, they could have solved it by scaling down the main map in order to allow for the Dark Zone to be one whole map by itself. But at the end of the day, this is just a preference for some other people. For me, it doesn't necessarily matter. I don't care, for the 3 Dark Zones, the way it's actually split up, it doesn't really bother me. I feel like there's enough area for me to run since I'm just basically focusing on the PvE side of things. But in that PvE experience or whatever it is, it's still the Dark Zone experience, and you still run into a lot of other people, which is basically what I wanted to highlight in this video. I've realized that playing on PC and playing on PlayStation, it's been a huge attendance in the Dark Zone. For some weird reason, there happens to constantly be a plethora or a number of agents that continue to make their way into the Dark Zone and are doing all kinds of activities. I can't tell you how many times some agents have snuck up, basically behind me to shoot me, or how many times I've had the opportunity to get the drop on someone. That's me, your non-PvP guy, by the way, because of the shenanigans going on. And I see somebody rogue, and I'm like, I'm gonna put a bullet in them because I want to get that bounty for the rogue capture or whatever it is. And so it's been very cool and very interesting. In fact, some of you here in the community, you actually saw me in the DZ and you sent me an invite. I guess the invite expired before I could accept it. I was eating breakfast and my controller was there. I was hiding in some little abandoned office, and they saw me and they were basically trying to say hi to me. They finally messaged me in the comments. So it's that crazy that there are actually people still running the DZ, because I think it's probably one of the last few interesting things that is probably available in the game to do right now. If you're not able to do the raids and find a clan, which, by the way, there are clans and there are communities that are still able to help you with the raid. They don't mind, honestly. I think that's another thing. Yes, I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not a fan of the raids not having matchmaking, and I've said this in most of my videos, but these communities have to actually have geared up to be able to solve that problem for people who may not have access to 7 other people that are experienced with the raid. So check out GC Rock, check out the LCN clan, which is the clan that I'm actually a part of on PlayStation, and you'll find people that are, like-minded and be happy to help you. But this is really interesting as well, because the community is kind of, in a weird sense, still engaging in this game, because right now, a lot of the other games that seem to have attracted people for a little bit seem to not have been able to provide the things that, the Division players usually do like. And so when you think about the nature of the Dark Zone, it does have a multi-layered, system in terms of the way they've actually designed its levels and designed its encounters. And I think this is so unique in a sense that because we played the Division 1 for so long, we almost kind of took this entire system for granted. And, as much as I would be the first to tell you that I'm huge on PvE, I think that PvE VP aspect of the Dark Zone is actually what really makes it some sort of a holistic environment. I think, if you kind of break it down and say, what really does make the Dark Zone special, it's that you have all the mechanics that are existent in the Division 2 all put together and jumbled up with a whole lot of freedom. And that freedom, where your hand is not necessarily constrained, is where I think a lot of players really benefit from in terms of enjoyment. Because if you go to the DZ, the enemies are scaled in a way that you can really feel strong. If you build well, you run in there, you can take out bad guys, and you can really feel like you're doing a really good job. You can get a lot of rewards for it as well, which is crazy. I almost want to say it's almost unfair that a landmark that takes you probably a few minutes, maybe 2 to 3 minutes to clear, depending on how geared up you are, or if you're running with a team, will give you a very similar XP capacity in terms of time to mission to XP ratio than you would get if you were doing, say, on the open world outside. Because to be able to get that kind of, ratio in terms of XP, you have to probably run down to a control point, or maybe you probably have to burn through a whole mission. But in the DZ, you're capable of just using that as kind of your sandbox to clear a lot of things. And so these are some of the advantages of the Dark Zone itself. But I think where the Dark Zone kind of holds itself back is also in the mechanics that are available there and that excessive freedom. And so this is something that kind of, in a sense, constrains a lot of people from going in. For me, the reason I usually go in at the end game of the Dark Zone is because I'm already done farming. I've already hustled all the gear that I want, and any other gear that's, I don't have that's exclusive in the DZ, I can give 2 cares about it. And so I just go in at this point. If somebody shoots me, cuts my extraction rope, it doesn't really bother me. And so this is basically why I go in there. A lot of other people will seek to go in there, in my opinion, but I think the progression that they seek to gain from going in there in terms of farming gear and getting specific items, they risk that, they risk that progression getting cut short by the extreme freedom of somebody coming over to steal their gear. So they stay out and then they keep out forever. And they never necessarily realize that this is a piece of the end game content that you can actually come in and engage. So I think the Dark Zone in itself is unique. Yes, it actually is a cool concept. Yes, but it holds itself back from a huge majority of the community, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh yeah, the Dark Zone is vibing. Not really. I mean, yes, there are always people there, but on PlayStation, I noticed there's a much more diverse player base, because, PlayStation just has a lot more players. So when I go into the DZs and PlayStation, I get to see all kinds of different players. But on PC, it's usually the same folk. I mean, I've started to even learn some of y'all's, you play names and whatever. And so it's kind of interesting to see, I'm like, oh yeah, this agent, this guy's going to go rogue. If I see him in the server, basically he's going rogue, or his team's going rogue, or whatever it is. It's usually the same old guys that you find. Or maybe it just happens to be we usually go into Dark Zone around the same time. But at the end of the day, though, I think with the division concept and the way the developers are probably going to be, in my opinion, and this is my own thought process, I think they'll probably do another iteration of this division, games in terms of following the Division 2. I think they can really look into what they really want to attain from the Dark Zone. Because yes, the Dark Zone does have that piece of the end game content attached to it. But I think because they understood that a huge portion of their player base doesn't necessarily like to use the Dark Zone for progression because of the chaotic nature, I think they went ahead and just decided that, you know what, we're going to do our best to kind of make it where you don't have to go into DZ. And as they did that, then it just basically fortified the positions of those people who would never have really gone into the DZ in the past. And so the question is, how do you actually balance it and make people come into the DZ? Do you have to use exclusives to lure people in? It doesn't really seem to work much. And so there has to be something special. And I could suggest things, but that's not necessarily my job. I think the developers have to come up with creative means of doing it. And I think maybe it must have benefited people because, at the end of the day, if you could actually progress through the game without going into the Dark Zone, then I think maybe, and this is just a maybe, you feel more comfortable going in there because now the DZ doesn't affect your progression. And so you could just use it as a sandbox or just blow off steam, run around, destroy landmarks in short, distances, and just kind of enjoy new mechanics that are available in the game. So maybe it did work out in a sense, but again, the Division right now didn't get any new content to continue to bring players in consistently. So that probably was also another thing that kind of shot the entire, transition of people moving from PvE in the open world to PvE in the Dark Zone. But anyways, I just wanted to go ahead and highlight this just to talk about the state of the DZ right now from my experience. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. So far, I think people are going to be returning to the game when there's anything new to do. Some people are contemplating it. Some of you are even asking me in the comment section, or even telling me and saying, I think I want to come back and play, but I'm just kind of like, I don't know if I'm in the mood. But that's another thing. The Division is one of those games that kind of has you consider if you want to spend time or not. And so I guess that's something that, people have to decide. But again, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. I appreciate you guys so much for watching the video. Thank you once again, and peace out.